basis or at least a quarterly basis. Some people's budget only allow it to be done one time. And Garrett juice, as probably a lot of you know already, is compost tea or liquid humate and molasses, vinegar, seaweed, and the fish for the Garrett Juice Plus, which we have found makes it work even better. The formula is for you on the website and in my books, or you can get the commercial products as well. And we recommend that program, a simple fertilizer application, and then liquid Garrett Juice mixture for everything from ranches and farms to polo fields to orchards to landscaping to herbs and vegetable gardens. And we've done it from Maine to Florida to California to Washington and Oregon, and even blueberries in Kansas. All kinds of crops and all kinds of soils and all kinds of weather. That simple program works. Compost, rock powders, sugars, natural mulches, of course, and then the dry fertilizer, 1 to 3 applications a season, and then the spraying of Garrett Juice Plus as often as the budget and your time allows. Now, you can speed up the process of mycorrhizal fungus by using something like this product, which contains beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungus, and you can meet the owner of this product line here. They're down in the room down the hall, and during the breaks you can talk to all these people that you're going to be hearing me talk about and hearing from. One of the research projects that's important for you to understand about how much better organics works than the typical chemical approaches from this simple test that Dr. Michael Amaranthus did up in Oregon. A friend of mine, also the co-author with me, and John Ferguson on our professional book, the newest book we did. But what they did here was fertilize the corn on the right with the typical synthetic fertilizer that's recommended in the industry, in the agriculture industry. On the left, organic fertilizer, and the seed were treated with mycorrhizal fungus. That was the difference in the two. You can see the plant production, the size and the color is better, but here's the most important part of the story. The water that went through, they put the same amount of water on both of these test plantings. The water that came through the synthetic side is represented on the right over there. You can see the volume of water there. And on the left is the water that came through on the organic test planting. There's two things there. One is the nutrients that leached through, and then, but maybe even bigger, and it gets to be a bigger deal every year, is the volume of irrigation and or rain that's needed for the two programs. So in the organic program, far less water is wasted, more water is kept in the root system, and the nutrients as well. Pretty big deal. Just another part of the organic piece of the puzzle is the mulch. The shredded mulch is what we recommend. Shredded native tree trimmings. You can use cedar, you can use hackberry, you can use whatever's growing on your property. And it holds in place, it looks good, it breaks down rather quickly, which is important. We want that. We don't want something like cypress that hangs around too long. We don't want to use pine bark because of that issue. It won't stay in place. It washes away. It blows away. If it does stay in place, it breaks down into some pretty nasty natural chemicals that really aren't very good for early plant growth. So it's the most used mulch, and it's the one that I like the least. I like pine straw, though. That might surprise you because it doesn't have the same chemical properties. It stays in place better, and it breaks down and feeds plants a lot better. The pine needles, but the pine bark, not a good choice. Tony Menasseri is one of the experts that you'll hear from today, moderator on our forums, and he and his wife have a farm in McKinney, and this is a shot he gave me that I love because it shows shredded tree trimmings, I think that he got from somebody clearing an area, piled up the material. The pile that you see in the back is after it had been sitting around a couple of years. You don't even have to maintain shredded tree trimmings for it to finally break down and become beautiful compost. We can put it on the soil as a mulch and it'll do it there. It's called sheet composting, or you can pile it in a pile and let it break down. If you turn it occasionally, it'll go faster, but you don't have to do that. You're going to hear a lot about trees. Tyson Woods is going to be doing demonstrations for you here about tree flares and all. We want our trees to look like that. Doesn't matter whether it's a Japanese maple or a fruit tree or an oak or anything in between. The flares of trees should be exposed so much so that you can step on the flare. A lot of people think that it ought to be just curving out just a little bit. That's not right. It needs to be very much exposed. This is, Tyson and I were talking about it earlier, this is one of the most common things that we see, not only here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but around the country. Plant trees that are coming out of the ground just like a telephone pole or like a pencil stuck in the ground. When you have that, you know that your tree is way too deep in the ground. We don't like the little beds built around trees either, because that tends to create a situation where they get to be too deep in the soil. Here you see the soil being taken off in that situation, more than 10 inches of soil removed to get down to the flare. You see two things. You see the soil up on the trunk, but you also see the roots coming up, and in a lot of the cases circling around and girdling the tree. So it's bad just in all ways. And Tyson will go into this in some more detail for you. But this is a plant that I'll have to admit to you that I pulled out of my own landscaping at home. It was a native plant, a Carolina buckthorn, that we transplanted years ago. You know, a whole bunch of people working on the site, and I wasn't paying attention, and it got planted. You see the crown way down here. Let me see if I can figure out how to use this laser here. There you go. Somebody else has got the laser. Okay. Let me go. Tyson, the planting line is way up there, is where it was planted, right up there where he's showing. The crown of the plant is way down here, was over a foot deep. And you can see what happened. It tried to grow back up to the surface, but it actually rotted in the ground, and I lost that plant. I hate to admit to you, but I've had most of my trees at my own property too deep in the ground. Not as deep as that one. I got a call on the air one day from Terry in Waco, and he said, "Howard, my bur oak tree is starting to thin out in the top just a little bit, and there's a little bit of dead. You think it could be too deep in the ground?" And I said, "Well, Terry, is it coming out of the ground straight?" And he said, "Absolutely. I've been listening to you, and it's coming out of the ground just like a telephone pole." I said, "Well, it's too deep in the ground." He said, "Can I uncover it myself?" And I said, "Yeah, if you're careful, you can do it a little bit at a time, and with brushes and hand tools, and uncover it." Well, he did, and he called me back in a couple of weeks on the air again. He said, "Howard, this is Terry again. At what depth should I find the flare?" He uncovered on this bur oak 8 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other. He's an engineer, and he measured the circumference and the diameter of the trunk when he did the work, and he's been monitoring it now over the years, and it has responded. It's growing very well. It has filled back out on top. So it doesn't matter how old your plant is. It can be a young shrub or vine that you plant too that's too deep in the container and has the circling and girdling roots. If you have that, what you need to do, and you'll have it almost in every case, throw it over in a bucket of water. We do this with all the plants that we plant, all the shrubs, all the trees. We even do it with perennials and annuals to an extent. You soak the plant in water, get it thoroughly hydrated, then you can take those circling and girdling roots that are way too high off. You can pull the roots apart a little bit. We used to recommend cutting and scraping the root balls that were too bound, that were root bound.